the editor of Satsari and highest circulated Assamese weekly Sadin. She has published 24 books, of which 10 are novels and 14 are short story collections and personal essays. Her story Banphool is now translated into English by her translator who's joined by us on stage, Parveena, and will be a part of an anthology curated by her. So, before I invite you to read from your books, we both know that you've been excelling in the Indian language, literary and journalistic fields. I would like to invite Meera ji here, and I would like to know what it takes a woman to be a journalist out there into the field and to be operating in the Indian language scenario.
Yeah, in Malayalam, actually we had a very vibrant journalism in Malayalam, but I happen to be the first woman in the editorial board of a then 107-year-old newspaper. It's the biggest newspaper in Malayalam. I was the Thank you. Thank you. I'll start from the beginning. So, Malayalam journalism has been very vibrant from the very beginning for centuries. But then, I happen to be the first woman to join the editorial board of the largest circulated, one of the oldest newspapers in Malayalam. So it shows the role of women and the importance of women in journalism as far as Malayalam is concerned. So I worked there for 13 years. I'm extremely happy that at one point of time,
Woman uninterrupted.
Yes.
Go on.
So at one point of time, I could do some stories, I could make some changes in the Malayalam journalism by my stories, pro-women investigative series and all. And to my knowledge, I may say that it's not easy to be a woman journalist, even though it is.
This is a better mic.
Yes, thank you. Hello?
The first one is better, I think.
Hello? Yes, thank you. So it's not easy to be a woman journalist because it was very difficult for me, especially because I had to prove that I am a good journalist. I can be as good as men. I can work at night because in those days, a woman from like me, we are not supposed to travel. Even if you come to Kerala, even now, you can see that women rarely travel during nights. After 9 o'clock, there won't be lonely women traveling in Kerala, even in cities. So it was a big adventure from my part to take up that job where I had to work only at night. And I used to come home after 12 sometimes. It's a big story, it's a long story. So I'll pass mic to Anuradha now.
Thank you. Well, the story doesn't say. Am I audible? Am I loud enough? Good. We don't need a mic. But the story doesn't say. The signifier and the signifier remains and so does the highlight. I'd like to now invite Anuradha to ask what's happening in the Assamese scenario. Let's talk about the movie.
Yeah, thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. Am I audible? Yeah? No. So I happen to be first editor in Assam. You know, the Assam is a very beautiful part of Northeast region, and in this region, we have actually above 20, the newspapers above 10 channels. And of course, everybody knows about it that Assam is a politically very much unrest region. And we have mostly 3 problems actually. There's a lot of problems, but 3 problems, all which always there have been. That is, one is infiltration from Bangladesh, and one is insurgency, and another is, the corruption. And I could say about insurgency, infiltration, and in some communication also, communication gap also there. So there is lots of remote areas you can't get in there. And border disputes is another thing, inside and outside. Inside the territory, there is lots of border disputes between Nagaland and Assam and Mizoram, like that. And outside that, we are surrounded by 3 or 4 borders from China, that's outsiders, China, Tibet, Myanmar, Bangladesh. We have always the border disputes. And in this region, when I took up the charge of an editor, it's really, everybody asked me that, could you do it really? Could you do it really? Because there is a lots of insurgency problem there, and the militants are there, and political unrest. All time there's political unrest situation is going on there. So everybody asked me, like, I just told them this, okay, let me see. I'm also a human being. All time, I think a woman can see much better in depth. They have the third eye, I think. So I mentioned about our idol, that is Durga. She has the third eye. Third eye means the insight, the better insight. So I think that let me use my insight first. So after that, since 2001, that's 13 years I'm working as an editor, and really I enjoy my job. Sometimes I got threatening from the corrupted people, and I sometimes have to go to the court for they release me as a Assami, like that, defamation case. I have to go for defamation case to the court sometimes, and these are things going along, But it is interesting and very much thrilling for me. It's okay.
Okay, thank you so much. It's quite interesting to know that although women and men face similar problems in the same working scenario, but it is the woman at times that feels the heat a bit more. And I think this situation is quite similar across the globe. We'll now get you to your readings. Yellow is the color of longing. It has made its mark. I have this story I have to tell you the story about the story that got published. Yellow is the Color of Longing was chosen by the Feminist Review as one of the 3 stories that they thought represented the lives of women in South Asia. Well, as you all know, that the Feminist Review is a very prestigious process. It has a very transparent process of selecting the best literary pieces. One of the remarks that Meera said she got for her story was that, don't think it is a feminist story, nevertheless, it must be published. Well, that's where the story transcended the boundaries we theoretically etch between feminism and humanism. And that is where I think she thought that she is one as an author, that her stories could transcend that gap and could become a humanist story. So I'd like to request Meera to read, not from Yellow is the Color of Longing, but from her new unpublished novel, Aracha, which translates to hangman, but is being called hangwoman.
It's titled Arachar. So, I just wanted to write a story, a novel, which no other man or woman would write. So I was thinking about some themes, and I thought it would be quite unique if I could tell the story of a lady hangman, executioner, in the Indian context. So I'll read from the Malayalam first. I'm reading the second chapter. നന്ദ രാജാക്കന്മാരുടെ കാലത്ത് തന്നെ ഞങ്ങൾ ആരാച്ചാർമാരായിരുന്നു. ക്രിസ്തുവിനും 420 കൊല്ലം പിറകിലേക്ക് ഞങ്ങളുടെ വേരുകൾ ആഴ്ന്നു കിടക്കുന്നു. ദക്ഷയാഗവേദിയിൽ ആത്മാഹുതി ചെയ്ത സതിയുടെ ശരീരവും കൊണ്ട് പരമേശ്വരൻ താണ്ഡവമാടിയതിനും മഹാവിഷ്ണു ആ ശരീരം സുദർശന ചക്രം കൊണ്ട് ഛിന്നഭിന്നമാക്കിയതിനും സതീദേവിയുടെ ശരീരം 18 തെറിച്ചു വീണതിനും മാത്രമേ നമ്മുടെ കുടുംബക്കാർ ദൃക്സാക്ഷികളാകാതെയുള്ളൂ എന്ന് രാമുദ പരിഹസിച്ചു. അത് കേട്ട് ധാക്കുമ കോപിച്ചു. പോടാ അവിടുന്ന്. ഭഗവാൻ മഹാവിഷ്ണു ചക്രം കൊണ്ട് മുറിച്ചെറിഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ ദേവി സതിയുടെ വലതുകാലിലെ തള്ളവിരൽ വീണ സ്ഥലമാണടാ കാളിഘട്ട്. ഈ കാളിഘട്ടത്തിലെ ആദ്യത്തെ താമസക്കാർ പിന്നെ ആരായിരുന്നെന്നാ നിന്റെ വിചാരം? Now from Hangwoman. From very long ago, right from the times when the Nanda kings ruled the land, ours had been a family of famous hangmen. Our roots sink deep down to 420 years before Christ. Thakuma had a sweet reply even to Ramuda's teasing banter that the only events which our family members hadn't seen with their own eyes were Shiva's all-consuming Tandava with the body of Sati, who had immolated herself in Daksha's sacrificial altar in his arms, Vishnu splitting of her body into pieces with his Sudarshan chakra, and the pieces falling upon over 18 places. That sent Thakuma into a fit. Get lost, you fellow. Kalikat is the place where Devi Sati's right toe fell when Bhagavan Mahavishnu cut up the body with his chakra. Who do you think were the first inhabitants of this Kalikat? That was much before the white and black towns came up. Thakuma took pride in the fact that even the Chadurvarnya took shape much later. Before Bharat became Bharat, before 3 villages between the swamp and the forest beside the Hooghly became Kolkata, there was power and crime and punishment with death in the country. The very first hangman in our family was named Radha Raman Malik. He was palace doctor. That great Pidamahan fell madly in love with a woman who came to him with a fever. She was the beloved of the prince, the true heir of the kingdom. Thakuma said that our forefather of yore became a hangman so that he could possess the woman he loved. Many of grandmother's tales we heard as children were of many kinds of deaths. That forefather hangman's house stood in a large yard full of posha trees in full bloom. He was rich and handsome. Still, he did not win her heart. When King Mahanandin passed away, Mahapadmananda, his son by a dasi, threw out the true heir to the throne. A war followed. The wounded prince went to our Pidamahan to be healed. Pidamahan healed him. After he was healed, Pidamahan handed him over to Mahapadmananda. The new king ordered his public execution. Radharaman Malik went to the court begging that he be allowed to perform the hanging. He was the first person who went there asking for the job on his own free will. The king granted him his desire. The first time, the prince struggled and flailed as the noose tightened, but nothing more happened. The second time, Pidamahan fastened the noose in the precise fashion which our family continues to follow between the third and fourth vertebrae. This time, the prince's head broke as easily as a Portia flower from its stem with a single pull of the cord. As he ascended the gallows for a second time, the prince stared at Pidamahan and gritted his teeth. You will never possess her. But just the opposite was to happen. When the king asked Pidamahan about his reward, he asked for that woman and got her too. But because of the precision with which that hanging was carried out, he had to work as a hangman for the rest of his life. Those days, hangings were almost a daily affair. Pidamahan returned home at night with swollen hands. That woman, Chinmayi Devi, bore all of his 10 children. The night Thakuma told us that story, Ramuda, who was just 12 at that time, said to me as we lay on the soiled old mat ready to fall asleep, I'll never love a woman when I become big. Me too, I repeated. Those were the days when the ad song, One Day I'll Grow and Be Like My Big Brother, was always heard on TV. In those days, when watching TV at Bhuvan Chakravarti's house next door cost 10 paise, that song re-echoed from not just my lips, but my very heart. Thakuma never thought that hanging was vile. She was my grandfather's father's sister's daughter. She told us that her prayer as a child was to marry a hangman. She reminded us, that's our profession. We kill for the sake of justice. She was very firm when she told us this. When Pidamahan Radharaman was a doctor, he saved the general's life. When he became the hangman, he executed him. The doctor's job is to heal even the foe who appears before him seeking a cure. The hangman's job is to kill even his own son if he is a wrongdoer. No work is law. No work causes you any sin. Then, as far as performing this task is concerned, pride swelled in Thakuma's voice. No ordinary person can do it. The mind must be firm. The hand must be strong. And you have got to have brains. Brains to kill, Thakuma? I asked. She laughed aloud. You think this is a simple matter? My grandfather's father, that's your grandfather's father's sister's older brother, Jogendra Malik, used to say, work out at one glance the weight of the condemned's body, then measure the hollow in his neck. For what, Thakuma? The life breath is in that hollow, girl. Men are of many types. Some have strong bonds there. Won't break soon, so it has to be fastened correctly. Thakuma spoke as if she had done it 100 times. As she retold the stories of hangings, Thakuma's hands knotted and loosened a noose on an imaginary cord. That was a habit common to all women of our family. When they spoke, they always made and unmade nooses with the end of their garments, be it a sari, be it a dupatta. That must have been a psychological need. Only once did a woman from our family accept the job of the hangman. Hard to believe, but she had demanded that job.
Thank you so much. I think it takes a lot to unravel the fact that being a hangman could be a family profession. And that must have taken a lot of research on your part to understand the motives, the social motives to be precise, around this story. What is the story behind this story?
When I became a writer, I decided that I would document the lives of those unheard, those are not seen, particularly the lives of women. Because as a woman, I see a lot of women around me who goes unnoticed, not documented, not recorded, nowhere in the history. There is a statement in my story that history is scared of women. Because if you look into the history, be it Western history or Indian history or local history, We rarely see women in this recorded. It is as if women never existed in history in the past. So when I wanted to document the emotional history of literature is all about recording of emotional history, I believe. So when I wanted to record that history of women, the emotional history of women, the emotional evolution, the cultural evolution of our land, I thought I'll tell that story through a woman who is placed in the hierarchy where men prevail. So we have social empowerment and political empowerment. But when we take political empowerment, we rarely see women as women placed in any key position. So an executioner is the last in that hierarchy where the state, the really powerful, can kill, can decide the fate of a living human being. No? And I was placing a very ordinary, a very down-to-earth, a poor woman of our country, of India, in that position. So she was to hang, she was to kill. The power to kill is something very new to an Indian woman.
You mentioned the other day that you had to travel to Kolkata.
Yeah, so I had to find a good background to tell the story. At first I thought I'll tell through a Malayali woman, but then in 2004, I was writing this novel in 2011, and till then, the last hanging in India was in Calcutta in 2004. That was of Dhananjay Chatterjee. He was sentenced to death for raping and killing a girl of 14. So I thought this is a perfect backdrop of my novel, where I can talk about the women empowerment of India, of a lady hangman, the ethos, and the hollowness of empowerment to the ordinary people. So that's how I went to Calcutta. I wrote the first 5 chapters and showed it to my husband, and he said, this is a very new and very good theme, but the thing we lack in this is Calcutta. So we'll go to Calcutta. So we went there a few times. I was roaming around the streets of Kolkata, and then I could finish the novel.
So that introduces us to the ethnographer in you. Wonderful. I'd now like to shift the focus of this stage to Anuradha ji. We'd like to know, we'd like to hear in Assamese excerpts from Banpul, and we'd like to know what made Parveena chose this story for her anthology, and then she would read the excerpts in English.
I would read out of my stories, from the story, some portion I will read out, that you could feel the flavor of Assamese language. Bonfulor keitaman din. Haradhan Sordarar hatot dhori Bonful susuk samakoi Lohar gatekhon khuli somai gol. Eta dighol poduli. Prakanda gosor saa pori thoka sotalkhonot bibid phul. Bonfule এইফালে অহা যোৱা কৰোতে এই ডাঙৰ দুমহলীয়া ঘৰটো দেখিছে, কিন্তু ভিতৰ সোমাই কেতিয়াও পোৱা নাছিল। কিন্তু তাই এই ঘৰটোৰ বিষয়ে, ইয়াৰ মানুহবোৰৰ বিষয়ে বহু কথা শুনিছে। কথাবিলাক সিহঁতে জহকালি চোতালত নহ'লে জাৰৰ দিনত জোহালৰ কাষত সাধু শুনা দি মন দি শুনে। I think that's enough. And she will explain the story about it. It is about a story about a Harijan girl. Harijan girls means scavengers. She belongs to a scavengers family. And in 1970, what happened in my hometown, there was no school for the scavengers children. And they are not allowed to go to the school. And, but the Banful, a Harijan girl, she did protest. And that's about the story. I think she will read out the story on behalf of me. This one is better, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. The story is titled A Few Days in Banful's Life in English. So I'll read a few excerpts. Matching steps with her father as she crossed the garden to take a lane that led to the back of the house, she said, "Bapu, you just missed the road towards the bungalow." "Oh, that's not the entry for us. Toilets, bathrooms, drains are all located in the back of the house. Earlier, there was a separate route for us through the graveyard. When I was young, I used to come with my Bapu from that side, but later, there was some dispute between the old sub and the graveyard committee, and after a court order, the graveyard committee built a huge wall. We stopped coming from that side. Bapu, how many toilets and bathrooms are there in this house? 5. 1 for the old sub, 2 at Chota Sab's floor, and 2 for guest. What's guest? Guest means visitors. There are separate toilets for visitors? Of course. There is a separate one for the servants in the corner of the garden. I haven't counted that in. What does servant mean? Men and women who work for them. Bapu, are you also a servant? Haradhan stopped in his track and looked at her, then slowly said, "No, my position is below the servants." Here's the next one. What's her name? Hearing Chota Sab's question, Haradhan pushed Banful. Go on, tell him, say namaskar. Banful looked up to tell him her name. From where she was sitting, she saw a tall, roly-poly man. So he's the Chota Sab about whom she has been hearing from her parents. She murmured her name, but Chota Sab couldn't hear her. So Haradhan had to tell him her name. Banful just folded her small hands in a namaskar, like she did while praying to God, as if she wanted to reach out to him through her folded hands and pleading eyes. Then I'll move on to the next. Can't you all do without education? How many children in this is what Haradhan is telling. How many children in this colony are studying? Hearing her father's harsh tone, Banful helplessly looked at her mother. Sons of bitches, we need to clean their shit. If we don't clean their drains, even for a day, they feel suffocated. And if our children study in their school only turn into a shit pot. Haradhan spat out in disgust. Surprisingly today, her father's voice was feeble as he said, "Even if we manage to pay the school fees, do you think we'll be able to pay for the books, slates, and pencils? How much do you earn by sweeping the streets? The kachcha latrines are being replaced by sanitary latrines in this area. 2 more families are building proper latrines. Once completed, I lose my job of carrying the night soil. Do you know what that municipality Sardar had told me? That within a year, they would stop using our pushcart to carry night soil. We will lose our jobs." A heavy feeling, this is the next one. A heavy feeling descended upon Banful. If only she didn't have this dream of going to school, she too would have been happy like those children, would have been playing like them. She sat on the mud floor and stared at the sky without focusing on anything in particular. The kites were hovering above the sky. They often did around their colony. The festivals in their colony often meant slaughtering of a pig. The 4 legs of the pig would be tied to a bamboo pole and it would be skinned alive. Hearing its screams, the stray dogs would surround the area. The crows would wait on the rooftops. The fights among the dogs and also the crows. The laughter of the happy people waiting for the feast. The painful screams of the pig and the kites flying high in the sky. As the dogs and the crows chased one another for the remains of the pig, one of the kites would zoom down and snatch a blood-stained intestine. It looked like a flying snake from below. Banful could not eat that meat. She could not even take part in the merrymaking. Whenever she saw a kite flying in the sky, she could hear terrible screams of a dying pig. Now she goes to school. Yeah? Buoyed with a happy feeling, Banful went to school carrying her slate and pencil. Banful was the only one from the Horizon colony. There were a few elite men with Chota Sab who came to celebrate the inauguration of the school. Chota Sab ordered one of those people to distribute sweets to the children. Banful immediately recognized a variety of the sweet. Whenever her father brought us coveted bags from the bungalow, After some celebrations, there were bound to be some pieces of that particular sweet in those bags. She had to fight with her two brothers for a bite of that soft yellow-colored sweet. Aesthetically, she bit into the sweet. But next moment, she remembered her brothers. Quietly, she hid that half-eaten sweet in the fold of her underwear. Chota Ma'am then introduced them to a cat-eyed man. Say your greetings. He is your teacher. Bunful didn't like the man at the first sight. He was trailing Chota Ma'am wherever she went. At that moment, to inspect the school, entered their classroom. Chota Ma'am pointed at Bunful and whispered something to them. She went red with embarrassment. Among all the children, Chota Ma'am had to pick her up. The lady who wore her hair in a top knot asked Ma'am scavenger or cobbler? Scavenger, I mean Horijan. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Parveena. Thank you for a wonderful reading. I think, despite being the fact that untouchability is a criminal offense in India, this story documents the life otherwise. The story documents that nothing much has changed on the grassroots level. I'd like to ask you, ma'am, what were the materials for you, what were the inspirations for you to write this story?
Actually, what happened in my childhood, I met Bunful, you know. And in my town, actually, what happened, those Harijans, they carry night soil from house to house, you know. And the Haradhan, he used to come to our, you know, to our area. And one day, I met Bunful with him. And when I was also very much small then, I was also in school then. And I have listened the story that she had a mind to go for school, and she wanted to be educated, but nobody allowed her to go to school. That was the inspiration. And it is the story has been written from my, you know, it is like a nostalgia, you know. I met that child, but I don't know now where she is. But the back of my mind, somehow I carried a pain, you know.
Yeah.
That is the inspiration, actually.
So that means that for both of you here, real life, real people become an inspiration for writing from a feminist perspective. Is there a feminist perspective? Because as I read both of their works, I found that each of their writings mitigates the whole boundary that feminism has perhaps created around itself. As I just mentioned in the beginning of the session, that the comment she got for her stories from the Feminist Review, and what you told me about your inspiration in life is the life itself.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a bit about your idea about the feminist humanism and the kind of inspirational, philosophical or ideological standpoint you'd like to take about a certain issues in life. Meera, yeah. Meera. We can start with Meera ji. Yeah.
That's a big question. I write, I don't think I'm a woman. A feminist, I am a humanist. Feminist is a part of the larger canvas of humanism, where I wish to speak for those can speak. I think that's the primary function of the task of the duty of a writer. Because in the Indian context, as a woman from I see that values men and women victims alike. In the new social, financial scenario we are living in, both are victims in different ways, sometimes in the same way. So, feminism is a part of, I think, I am a feminist. I have feminist values endorsed in my writing. But again, I can't be kind of a female chauvinist. I would like to be right for the whole world, the nature, the environment, each and every living organism, to preserve and uphold their dignity. And I think that only a writer can transcend time. Because what will we, how would we know? After 50 years, interrupted again. Women interrupted again. So, what would be our values, our sensibility after 100 years? A writer has to remain there for the future generations too. It's just like what one of our celebrated writers, Kamala Das, Madhavikutti, has said. When we look the past writings by women from East, West, North, South, we see a continuation. That the emotions of women, the emotions of marginalized lives, people, evolving in a way which proves that Madhavikutti was right. She has written in a story that it's like the ancient marathon runners of Greece, where people used to run. One person will run with a torch, burning torch. He will just fall down, tired, and someone else will take the torch and will continue running. I think, from my observation and experience, women all over the world have been doing this. They never started the journey, and they would never end. Each one will be doing their part of the job. They are taking forward the journey, that torch, burning torch. And I think that's me doing from Kerala, and that's what Anuradha doing from Assam. So there's nothing to be surprised in the similarities we have. It would be the same done by writers all over the world.
That would leave a bit to be desired, because a revolution without an agenda, I don't know where it would go, but we would come to that point later. Maybe we can hear from Anuradha ji about her perspective.
Actually, it's a very critical thing to separate from humanism and feminism. No? It's a very critical thing. I don't believe on I'm not a hardcore feminist. I'm a humanist, and I think the all female are first human being. Yeah, and I don't want the separate, health pays for women. Sometimes I have seen in the magazine and newspaper, there is a woman page, and they generally put the subjects like about women health. So I don't know. Actually, women are also a human being, and without a woman, how the next generation will come up, And most of all, women, actually, they give birth, what man doesn't do, And from a man generally, the man focus comes from the female. Without woman womb, how a man will come? So I think I don't believe on these things, but I emphasize on female because we know very much that in India particularly, there is a gender discrimination. According to our mythology, there was no gender difference in our old age. If you say about the Gargi Maitri and all, but in course of time, what happened? Female gradually has lost their status. They're put into the kitchen, And gradually when again it comes up, like, they get education and they have the economic freedom. First thing, the economic freedom will open the door of emancipation of, the life of a woman. It is the actually true way to go through. You must have the economic freedom first. That's why I analysis they must have the education first and get some jobs, so that they don't have to depend upon their husband or others' money. I think this is the more important thing.
One thing that's common between both Meera and Anuradha is that they have extremely supportive families that encourage them to read and write. Well, not many are as blessed as you are, and you would know being in the field that in which you operate.
Yeah.
What happens in scenarios where women are prohibited to write, where they are prohibited to express themselves, and that's very prevalent in our part of the world. So, would you like to share your thoughts on such situations about, because we are in a series called Women Uninterrupted, so how do we go about uninterrupting the process of expression, the freedom of expression for women? We could start with...
I tell you, I'll answer this by telling you a story. I was born and brought up in a village in Kerala. A village is named Shastangota. It had the largest freshwater lake in Kerala. So, in our neighborhood, there was a woman, and she was my mother's close friend. I used to call her Amma, that means mother. She was like, she treated me like a daughter because she didn't have daughters. She had only 3 sons. So after many years, I knew this woman. She used to cook for me. She used to make delicious snacks for me. And I had always associated her with cooking, good cooking. She was very beautiful too, a lovely woman, very homely woman. Her husband was twice a member of parliament, the first and second parliaments of India. He was a very powerful man from a very powerful family. So after many years, after my marriage and I became a mother, we went to visit her. Then she was in her late 70s, and she served us lunch. Then while we sat there chatting, she came to me and she offered me a notebook. That notebook was very old, worn out. And she asked me, "Daughter, will you please correct these?" I was surprised. I didn't understand what she is saying. I just opened the book very carelessly, and I could see in faded ink, the blue ink, once blue ink had become kind of very faded purple or some other color. And in that faded ink, I was reading one of the finest lines in Malayalam. A very nice poem. I was really shocked because all my life, till my 35th year, I had known this woman, I had called her mother, and I never knew that she was a writer. She was such a fine writer. I just asked her, "Amma, why didn't you publish this?" Because her husband was the one to start the first political weekly in Malayalam. He was a good writer. He was a very good journalist, very, very kind of respected scholar. He could easily have published her works, his wife's works. She told me, once I showed these to him, then he didn't read them. He asked me, "Are they good?" I said, "I don't know." Then he just threw away the book and he said, "Okay, show me when you write very good pieces." So, it was an eye-opening for me. I took the book, I brought it home, and every night she used to call me. I come from my newspaper office by late night after my work in the desk, and then she will call me. And one night by 1 o'clock she was calling me. If she calls me to see that whether that book is. The book is safe, whether I had lost it. She always will caution me daily. She will caution me, daughter, don't lose the book, keep it safe, give it back. Then that night, actually, I was thinking about myself and herself. I couldn't understand what an Indian woman, a typical Indian wife, a mother, a grandmother, attaches so much value to some of her writings, which she wrote some 4 or 5 decades ago, when she had dreams, when she had health. And why is that woman clinging to those lines which she wrote?
Well, nothing can be more tragic.
That night that I decided to be a writer.
Beautiful, just beautiful. Nothing can be more tragic than loss of a female voice. Anuradha ji, to you, what do you feel about the issue?
Why I write?
Why you write, and what do you feel about a situation where woman is not granted or is not given her agency to express herself?
Okay. I became a writer accidentally. You know, I never thought that I would become a writer somehow. So I have done my master's in sociology, and I like painting. I want to do painting. I like colors. And after that, I have realized actually that no, it is not my perfect outlet. It is actually, I have started when I was in Kolkata. I was working there and I'm studying there. Then I have started my journalism career there. Then I have started writing, and after that I have realized that when my writer published in Assam, I write in Assamese language. So when it's been published in Assam, then I got tremendous inspiration from the readers, view, you know. So that is the most important thing, when readers feedback you. You know, that is the most important thing. Readers, they always tell you, yes, you go on, like this. This is the most important thing, and this is the main inspiration. And I just went on like this, you know. So gradually I have seen that what I couldn't do with my brush, with my colors sometimes. So I thought that it is better use pen, and through my words I could express myself, my own soul, you know. Sometimes when I go to the village, I have seen the women who are working morning till night. They are very hardworking. They are working for their family, but they are deprived of love and care. So then, on behalf of them, I want to speak. You know?
Lovely.
Sometimes when I go to industrial area, I have seen those workers, and I have from top to bottom. They're like working like a machine, you know. Sometimes they forgot that they are also a human being. Their conflict, their dialogue, their dilemma, they actually, in this system, they cannot express anything. And on behalf of them, I want to speak, you know. And sometimes what happens, when I go around somewhere, in the jungle also, I feel that tree, those birds, they also want to speak something, but we have no time to listen them. So on behalf of them, on behalf of birds, on behalf of the river, on behalf of the trees, on behalf of the sky and earth, you know, I want to speak.
That's lovely. That's
Yeah.
absolutely lovely. So that gets us to meet two wonderful female writers of our country who are writing about lives that need to be documented, who are, we may look, our eyes are so used to these lives in our everyday living, that we may find them common, but these are the writers who are making them uncommon through their writings. I now open this session to the audience if they have any questions, comments, feedback. As she said, that they are the only inspiration for somebody who wants to go on writing.
I must admit, in the beginning, I found it difficult to follow you. Know that I have to stay here, get accustomed to the accent and the sensibilities of what you had to tell us. I had the privilege of meeting you privately.
Yeah,
And
we met before in the hotel.
That's right. And
We have had a very good talk, yeah.
Absolutely. And I was just sorry people didn't stay. You didn't deserve that they should leave, because you really had something very important to tell us. And I was so moved, especially now, accustomed was saying,
I can't listen.
it's difficult when you come from another culture to follow the language. But it got so wonderful now that I'm accustomed, and you really had something important to share with us. Understand what you were reaching out. I loved your story about your surrogate mother and her need to express herself through her poetry, and that she didn't get her voice heard, and the injustice of that. So her lifeline, her real person, her real hidden agendas of herself came through to you, and you are carrying on that. And I was very moved by that story. There was a book recently written and a movie about the southern part of America, and the women had a voice afterwards. I don't know if you know what it's called, Help. And the same thing happened in that they found their voice, and it's so moving. So thank you for that observation. And I really just want to say that Virginia Woolf said, money dignifies. I liked your comment about when you've got the money, how it can dignify you and lift you out of some other place.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, thank you.
I had written a story about that mother, which is in my book, Jugular of Memory. So she was a model of that story.
Thank you very much for that session and for your readings. I just had a very, I just had this thought that, you know, you're giving voice not just to women, but also, you know, to the marginalized, you know, like the hangman's family and, you know, the scavengers and so on. So if you could just say, I know you have already spoken about this, but just a little bit about how when you, when an idea comes or when something, you know, you come across something, what makes you feel that, okay, this is a story that I would like to tell or I would like to write? To both of you, I mean.
That's very difficult to explain, because that is something, that's our secret, no? That spiritual secret, how it happens. I cannot speak on that, but there are certain real life experiences which will haunt me, which when I experience, when I go through them, when I listen to others, I see, oh, here is something which I should document. I'll tell you a small story if we have time. It's a sequence to the other mother story. So when I was a journalist trainee journalist in 1993, we were having one birth centenary of the one who started the library movement in Kerala. So I had to interview one of his colleagues. He was very old, pretty old. He was almost deaf, completely deaf. He could hear only little with the help of earphones. So I searched him, I traced his house. It was in Kottayam where I live in Kerala. So I went there and I saw a very lovely grandfather and grandmother living there with their children abroad. It's a very beautiful, typical Kerala house with lot of trees, birds, maids, everyone. So this lovely grandmother was there, and I was interviewing this this lovable grandfather. He was giving me all the information I want, but this grandmother was kind of roaming around me. She is just clinging to me. She will never let me go after the interview. She wants to ask me, how did you study? How did you become a journalist? What you write? Have you seen this person? Have you seen Madhavikutty? Have you seen M.T. Vasudevan Nair? Kind of things. And then she said, she insisted that I should have lunch with them. She served me lunch, and after lunch, the grandfather took off his earplugs, and he was sitting in the armchair right in front of us. And then this grandmother said, she wouldn't let me go, and I just asked her a very simple, very kind of question. Amma, do you have, in the past, have you been writing? This woman had a terrible transformation. The lovely face was all furious, and she was saying, writing. I was blessed by Mahakavi Vallatol. You know, I was reading a poetry in his in a meeting which he attended, and he said, her name, she was the incarnation of Goddess Saraswati. And this man saw me there and married me, falling in love with me, and there stopped my writing. He was growing up, he was climbing the ladders one by one, and I had lost my life. I had to be his wife, I had to bear his children, and now I am nothing and he has everything. That was a kind of this moment of revelation. I was just 24 or 25 at that time, and it was then, that moment, from that house, from that woman, that I learned a lot about life, about married life, about being a wife, domestic life, everything. So that again was an experience which tempted me to restart my writing.
So is that like telling us to get married to be or not to be? That it will always be the question. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. We are running short of time. Stories will go on, and so would be the Darbar Hall readings. Thank you so much for making it to our session in this windy and rainy morning. And thank you, Anuradha ji. Thank you, Meera. Thank you, Parveena, for being with us. Welcome.